Hi everyone, welcome to Coding Bytes. Today I'm going to show you how to make an LED blink. There we go, something simple. Now, quite often we'll have a question come up, is it possible to make something blink in Twinkle HMI and how do we do it? And quite often people tend to gravitate towards the PLC. I mean, the PLC is a very valid way of doing this where you could potentially tie something's visibility to the status of a variable, especially if that variable is changing between true and false. Completely visible. Let me show you how to do it in a different way, which I personally think it's much more versatile. It gives you a whole ton of other options that you can do. And one of the most important things is it's really efficient. We're going to use CSS to do this. Now, CSS is, if you've not touched any of this before, cascading style sheets. This is how the web is styled. So you have your HTML, which is the structure of your document. CSS comes on board and it applies all of the colors, the stylings, the borders, you name it. How a website looks is all based on CSS, and CSS itself has got some tricks up its sleeve when it comes to making things blink. Let's start. What I'm going to do first, because again this is Coding Bytes, so I tend to like to go just a tiny bit off topic, just so we can sort of share some extra information, is we're going to be using classes or class names in order to do this. A class is nothing more than an identifier which allows me to group some styling onto an identifier. So let's say, for example, I wanted something to be, let's say, for example, I had a push button or a row of push buttons, and one of those push buttons was like a take action button, and I want all of my take action buttons to be blue. I could make a class name called action or take action, and I can start applying styles to that class instead. So I can say, yeah, your background color will be blue if you are a take action button. And then what I can do is any buttons I have, I just apply that class name to them and they naturally take the styling. So let me show that first, because I think this is a little bit core to what we're going to do. And then I'll show you how we can use classes and how to add and remove classes on the fly to make something blink instead. So let's just go. Let's just do this. The example that we're going to have here. So I'm just going to drag on a couple of buttons just so we've got something to play with. Classes are completely possible, and they live in the themes section of Twinkle HMI. Now, the first one, because classes, because we need to know in Twinkle HMI what a class is, and there's like a little mechanism for making classes. You'll actually find that in this base.theme, or if you're using base dark, again, you can have. Because we've got lots of themes, each theme has its own set of class. You can derive your own class names, your own styling. So I'm just going to work in the base theme because I'm just going to use this light default skin, really. Just open up base theme. And what I can do is in this control class here, I can say make a new control class, and we'll call this take action. Oops, take action. Nice. So that's my class. And now anything that I deem as take action, I can now start adding some attributes to it. So what I'm going to do is just going to drag on the background color, and in here let's just do that blue. So I said about blue before, so just save that. So anything that is take action will gain a background color of blue. Now I could add as many stylings as I like here. So borders, font sizes, the font I'm using, drop shadows, anything that's available via Twinkle HMI styling wise, you can apply via classes. Now I highly recommend this anyway, because one of the things we don't really like doing is hard coding everything. So let's just apply it, and then I'll show you the benefits afterwards. So my push button here, let's say this is the button I want as my take action button. What I would do is go into properties, and you've got this thing here called class names, and it's actually an array because elements can have multiple class names. So it can be take action, it could be maybe disabled, so it naturally just grays it out slightly, those type of things. All right, we've got enabled and disabled, don't get that mixed up. But classes are, you can have a whole number of classes attached to your element. You can apply different stylings. I'm just going to add this take action styling to the button, and you can see it's already taken effect. Now that's great. So that I can do that per element. And what's ideal with this is it means that, let's say, for example, you've got some very common things. I mean, something as simple as, maybe they are take action buttons. Maybe they are stop buttons. Maybe they are text, which is the header for a group of settings. So it might be settings header, something along those lines. I highly recommend make a class for it, add the styling to the class, and then drag on your text and apply the class to it. Because what this means is it means that themes becomes really powerful. If you've hard coded all of your the colors here instead, so let's say this was my take action button. I said, oh no, okay, yep, this is the color of my take action button. And now you're selling your machine to a different customer, and the customer says, no, actually, we don't like your styling. You now need to go through every single page and find all of those different colors. And not only that, I mean, how hard was that to try and pick the exact value or try and keep a copy of what this number was? You've given people too much poetic license here. Your HMI will just drift, your stylings will be close enough. Where doing it using class names, these themes now hold the styling of your HMI. And we could now make custom themes, maybe for people who need high contrast displays, or maybe you theme your machines to the customers you sell them to, that type of thing. Then that's completely possible, because all you're doing here is coding buttons and saying you're the action button, you're the this button, you're the that button. And when you apply a theme to it, that theme resolves into styling, okay? So there we go. So a little bit off topic there. That's nothing to do with blinking. But as you can see, by applying a class to it, I can apply styles to an element. So let's start by making the thing that we're going to flash. And again, this could be anything, but I'm just going to use a, let's just use an ellipse. Because it's LED-ish. And this could be images. This could be anything, because we're going to be affecting its visibility at the end of the day. With this one here, let's just make it 30 by 30. Just so. And we'll just give it some colour as well. Colour, there we go. I could have used a class for this, but just for this example, I'm just going to colour it green. That's the wrong thing I'm doing there. Let's not do the background colour. Let's just reset that. I'll do the fill colour, just because otherwise it doesn't look like it. Perfect. There we go. Just save that. Right. Okay. So what I want to do with this one is I want to apply a class of blink. So what I'm going to do is make a blink class, because I want this thing to flash. Class it as blink. And then we'll do some coding as it where what CSS do I need to do to make things blink. So start off with the class name. So I'm just going to come in here. We'll delete that take action one. We don't need that anymore. New class. I'm going to call it blink. I'm actually going to do it lowercase, because I tend to do things lowercase when it comes to class names. Right, so I've got my blink class. There's nothing actually I'm going to add from here. So the reason why I've defined it up here is because this now allows me to use this class in TwinCat HMI. TwinCat HMI now knows this class. It shows up in that box when I say please select a class. It's going to be there. I now want to add my own custom styling to this class. Now, how I do that is I go into the base style CSS. So this is behind the scenes. This is cascading style sheets. We can actually put it at the top. Usually you'd stick it at the bottom of the documentation, but I'm just going to stick it here for the time being. And what I'm going to do, let me just, so I can't just write in here blink. So that's not going to be found, because because we've made this class using TwinCat HMI, it has appended a little prefix to it anyway. So what I'm going to do is just write on here, it's tchmi dash class, class hyphen blink. So that's the actual, so when I've made the blink class using TwinCat HMI, it writes for me TwinCat HMI hyphen class hyphen and then the name of my class. So that's here. By doing this, anything I write in here will now be the style that gets added to my element, which I've appended that class to. Stick with me. There we go. So I'm just going to save that. Okay, that's going to be fine for the moment. Now we're going to utilize it's one function of CSS which is quite advanced, which is its animate ability. So I'm going to actually copy and paste these in, because you don't want to sit and watch me write all this. So I'm just going to bring this one. So this one here, we're saying that I want to define an animation, and this is going to be something that the client side, the web browser, will look after. So the web browser is going to see this and say, okay, I'm going to do some animation on anyone who has blink. I'm going to use this thing called blink animation. This is for you to define. So this is, I've written this blink hyphen animation. I could have called that anything I like. I could have called that Ben. So blink animation, we'll get to that in a minute. This is where it goes looking for what should be done. We say that this animation is going to take 1 second for the whole thing to be done, and we want it to progress through the animation in a linear way. So when I say linear way, we define keyframes. We say at what position, at what point during this animation do I want things to occur? I want it to run through the animation in a linear way. So I've defined linear, and the last part of this is I want it to be infinite. I want it to, once it reaches the end, I want it to come back and repeat again. This is what's going to give us this blinking effect. So that's the first part. So anything I've assigned the blink class to, it will now try and assign this animation to it. Now we need to define what actually happens in the animation itself. So this defines, it sets the animation up, but we now need to define what's going to occur. And let me just copy and paste this one in, because again, it saves me just writing it. We use this notation here. So we say this at keyframes, blink animation. So that's the name. So anything you've written here, this is what identifies it. So it knows that this is the keyframes we're going to be using for this animation. Now I've defined from 0%, so that's the start of the animation, the visibility will be visible. And then as soon as it hits 50%, all the way to 100%, so I've actually defined from the point it changes and the end. So 50 to 100%, its visibility will be hidden, and that's it. So this code here is the only code that you'll need to do animation, and the minute we apply this to an element, it's going to animate between visible and invisible. Something to note though, it's always worthwhile doing this, is there's a thing called WebKit animation, and I believe this is to do with the browsers such as Safari. Now it's good practice. I know Twinkle HMI isn't supported on all browsers anyway, so so one of these might not necessarily be needed, but just bear in mind there is an underscore WebKit underscore animation, and if you was going to do exactly the same thing, you just copy and paste again, and you've just got the WebKit keyframes instead. So I'm actually going to leave that out for the moment because with Google, and we shouldn't need that. That should actually just use this first one. So I'm going to use it in Google. So just save that. Okay, so we've defined our animation here. 1 second. So you can see it's actually going to be flashing for half a second on, half a second off. And now what we can do is just go into our desktop view and we can assign the class name. Bring that over to blink. That's it. CSS, funny enough, CSS is live on Twinkle HMI. So even in the editor starts applying the CSS, and because the CSS is flashing, we see it live on here. So even though live view is also doing the same thing, we actually see it on our editor. Now, how would I do this? How would I make this flash only when a boolean is switched on or off? Excuse me. What I would do is select the element, use an event, and I would say custom event create data binding, because we want to watch something in the PLC ultimately. I'm just going to go into ADS PLC main my boolean, which is the boolean I made earlier. So when that boolean, oops, let's have that selected. So when that boolean changes, it will fire this event, and then what I can do is just add some, a switch, a condition to it. And what we'll do is create data binding back to the same variable, and we'll say if it's true, then I want it to blink. So what I'm going to do is I'm writing to a symbol, because almost everything is writing to a symbol in Twinkle HMI. Create a data binding. We're going to write to the symbol. It's the controls, the ellipse, in common and class names. And what I'm going to do is say your class names will gain blink. I want you to have blink inside you. Otherwise, your class names, I'm just going to reset that, will have no items in it. So I go between adding the blink class name or removing the blink class name. And we say, okay, and that's it. I personally would now take that out of its own properties, because I don't need it to have the class name to start with. Reset, because that's all going to be done by the event. And then we'll go live view. So we can see it stopped at the moment. If I swap onto my main, I'm just going to drag this out and dock it next to it just so we can see. Prepare value is true. And we can see it flash. There we go. So it looks complex, don't get me wrong, but it really isn't. We're defining a class, we're appending a style to it, and we switch that styler on and off using class names. Use class names anyway, because it's a way of like almost encapsulating all your styling in classes, and then you just add those class names anyway to any of your elements, and it just means that if ever you need to change something globally and say, oh, actually, no, that blue was slightly off on that action button, you just go into the class and just change blue, and all of your buttons throughout your HMI now change to that new blue. So I highly recommend using class names anyway. Using it to blink is also good. And just to finish up, just to show you that this isn't limited to just making something flash, because this is the ideal thing with using something like CSS. If we bring this base style in instead, and instead of using visibility, I'm going to use opacity. Let's just do opacity as 1. So let's just go on there and save instead. There we go. We can now make it fade. Actually, we'll do that the other way around because that looked nicer then. So I'll do that as 0, do that as 1. There we go. Yeah, there we go. So we can make them fade in, fade out. Actually, let's tidy that up even more. We'll put the 100%. So actually, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make 0 to 100% 0. 50% will be 1, which means how translucent this is, or its opacity. So by doing this, it means I'm going to run through this in a linear way. I'm actually going to ride up to from 0 to 1 and then back down to 0 again. So if we do this, we then get this nice sort of bouncing effect. You can use animations for anything. You can use it to move things around, change things colours. I mean, we could fade between different colours, so that's all completely valid as well. Yeah, the world is your oyster with this. We did visibility to make it blink, truly blink, but we could have just changed between different fill colours. So filled from grey to green and back to grey again. We could make a shadow slightly illuminate and come away. There's so many things you could do with this. You could really make an LED look fancy with this just by using animations and then just applying that class to it. Okay, I hope you found that of use, and I'll speak to you next time.